Hello everyone, CJ here. Let me start by commending animation studio White Fox for being able to weave their magic to produce one of the most popular anime shows of the season, Goblin Slayer. By now, those of you familiar with the source material should know that there are tons of changes in the anime that sets it apart from the light novel. Most of them greatly improve the story, but some of them don't really work. Many people may not understand why in the world they did this, so I am here to explain to you why all these changes were made. But before we go on, I have to warn you, there are going to be tons and tons of major spoilers, so if you don't want anything to be spoiled for you, you should click away. Also, be aware that there are going to be tons of graphic contents that are going to be discussed in this video. Okay, let's start with a quick introduction of the Goblin Slayer multimedia franchise. Goblin Slayer started as a light novel series. Light novels are short novels targeted for Japanese young adult audience. Currently, 8 novels plus 2 side stories have been published in Japan, and 5 novels and 1 side story have been translated into English. I have read all the English translations including the manga and also watched all the anime. It was adapted into manga early on, and there are 3 different manga series. Goblin Slayer, which follows the main storyline, Brand New Day, which adapts volume 4 of the novel, which is a collection of short stories and world building, and Year 1 is based on the side story novel of the same name, which is an original story prequel to Goblin Slayer. The anime only adapts volume 1 and 2 of the novels, with the addition of 1 chapter from volume 4, but it is completely restructured. Episode 1 through 4 adapts the first half of volume 1. Episode 5 adapts part of volume 4 and the start of volume 2. Then episode 6 starts with an interlude from near the end of volume 2, before going to volume 2 proper and finishing it at episode 9. In episode 10, it goes back to the second half of the first volume and finishes the anime series with the climax from volume 1. This plot restructuring sounds really weird, right? But it is going to make sense once I explain it to you. I'm going to break it down in detail by the episodes, so it will all make sense to you why they did this. I'm going to address important bits, but you can tell me what I missed in the comments. So let's begin. Episode 1. In this episode, nothing much changes from the novel. We have the decoy protagonist getting obliterated by the goblins, and Goblin Slayer saves the day. Some manga readers may think that it is missing scenes where the adventurers' lives flashes before their eyes, revealing more about their background. But those scenes are not part of the novel. They are exclusive to the manga. You can see why though. The mangaka was taking his creative liberty to accentuate the loss of these newly introduced characters by giving them backstories. We are shown that these rookies have dreams, potentials, and bonds, making it even more tragic to have their lives ruined and cut short just as they are starting their adventure. Without these scenes, they are just some overconfident rookies we don't care about. I think the animators did not use those scenes due to budgetary constraints, so they will just have to make do with the audio and visuals. Episode 2. Important bits. Boyoyoing! Nope, not that. The farm patrol scenes are actually quite important. I'm going to reveal why later, so let's park this patrol scene to the side. The other thing that's different is the event leading to the Mountain Fortress quest. The victims of these goblins are actually steel-ranked adventurers. Their struggle and brutal defeat were detailed in both light novel and manga. It really does the same thing as episode 1. Goblin Slayer was also supposed to tell his backstory to Guild Girl, but here he told it to Priestess. I don't think there is much significance here. It is mainly a time-saving device, but it also creates a powerful juxtaposition when he is telling his backstory as he's killing goblins. Before we go on, let's keep track of the bard song that exaggerates Goblin Slayer's exploits. This happened in volume 1, so let's park it here. Episode 3, nothing significant changes. Episode 4, here we get a quick glance of the mythology of the world. How after the gods were tired of just rolling dice to settle their feuds, they created the world, different races, and adventure with them like D&D characters. Many gods play the game, but there are 2 gods who are in control of the events surrounding Goblin Slayer. Truth, a god in the form of an old man with the dungeon master, and Illusion, a goddess in the form of a little girl who is the player. There aren't any images of them because the manga do not mention them. It only touches upon the concept very briefly and is non-committal about their existence. At the end of the novel, it is written that Goblin Slayer is just another pawn. He is unexceptional and he has no cheat abilities. Just to clarify, cheats are special abilities that are usually associated with isekai genre. It is usually an overpowered unique ability that the main protagonist have. Goblin Slayer would not save the world and he might not even change anything, but he somehow have the ability to prevent the gods rolling his dice. That is a contradiction, of course, since obviously that is a cheat power. Even if we were to charitably consider that it comes from his propensity to plan and strategize, then that would make him exceptional, which is another contradiction. In the novels, the gods are very real. In later books, monsters and dungeons do appear randomly. Even worshippers of dark gods receive magic weapons from their gods. Critical hits also exist. These are major problems to the plot because it means that there is no coherent cause and effect, and it is pointless to pay attention to the details of the world since everything is governed by randomness. It also affects Goblin Slayer's character background, since years of his experience and expertise as Goblin Slayer can just be nullified with a snap of the god's fingers. What if they just make all the goblins behave differently the next day? What is the point of emotionally investing in this character if nothing he does matter? So both the manga and anime have done the right thing by cutting out all the chapters about the gods, which has no plot purpose. Episode 5. The intro inspection scene did not happen in the novel. He is supposed to be indoor having breakfast with Cowgirl, but this is an important change, so let's park it here. The giant rat hunt from Volume 4 may look like an unrelated filler, but this is a very important foreshadowing for a later episode. So let's park it here. Here we have the beginning of Volume 2 of the novel, but at Episode 6, we actually start with a scene from the end of Volume 2. This is the mastermind who started the whole plot in the book. He was killed off by the hero in some faraway land. This sequence doesn't change the plot at all, but the way it is delivered is very effective in achieving something very different. Because it was told in a tavern by an adventurer like a tall tale instead of just a third-person description of what happened. This is a very brilliant example of stealth world building by Studio White Fox. In the later scene of the same episode, High Elf Archer reminded the viewers that a bard spread exaggerated ballads about the Goblin Slayer. On its own, the bard elevating the Goblin Slayer to heroic status seems like an isolated incident. But by changing the circumstance the hero's story is delivered, we are given the impression that exaggerated stories about adventurers are regularly told. And that would explain why new adventurers start adventuring with such unrealistic expectations. To the manga's credit, it also tries to address this by adding extra scenes that never existed in the novel. Episode 7. This is mostly faithful to the novel, but let's park the scene about the lack of giant rat requests to the side. Episode 8. This scene of undressed Goblin Slayer must be a hard choice for the studio to make, because it lessens the impact of Goblin Slayer revealing his face to the other adventurers in the anime finale. This isn't an issue in the novel because the Goblin Lord's raid happened in Volume 1, and this scene is from Volume 2. But they need filler episodes in between. I will explain why the climax of the first volume is pushed to episode 12 when we get there. In the anime, the flower bag is made a lot bigger. In the novel and manga, the flower bag is described to be a hempen pouch that fits into a bag. It is small. Of course, we know that Goblin Slayer is going to use the flower to cause a dust explosion, which is a real thing, and a hazard in coal mines and grain elevators. But such a small amount of flour is never going to create such an explosion. So, to sell the scene better, they made the flour bag bigger. Even though it is still very unrealistic that it will cause any significant destruction, White Fox takes great care to treat their audience intelligently. Episode 9. Goblin Slayer confronts the Sword Maiden. This is where we get the payoff for the giant rat foreshadowing. Of course, being an expert adventurer, Goblin Slayer would know that something was wrong, but without proper foreshadowing, the twist would feel shallow and contrived. By combining an existing scene and an unrelated scene in a future volume, We get proper foreshadowing and the dialogue where Goblin Slayer suspects something was amiss because of the lack of giant rats in the sewer makes sense. However, it still doesn't explain what the actual conspiracy is. I think this is intended to be vague, as it is in the novel. Because if we fully know the extent of her crime, then readers can't accept her as a recurring character who takes on the role of Goblin Slayer's part-time thirsty MILF harem member. Episode 10. This is a downtime episode with extended farm inspection scenes. The inspection scenes from the novel are cut up and interspersed throughout the series, and they dedicate a whole episode here to foreshadow the climax of the series, which is the battle against the Goblin Lord's army. We are treated to a montage of inspection and fortification, which only the anime can do. So the payoff is that when Goblin Slayer discovered the Goblin Scout's footprints, the anime has given us enough foreshadowing. Otherwise, it would just be another random encounter. At episode 11, they made a very small tweak which really helped viewers understand the context of the upcoming battle. Cowgirl asks Goblin Slayer, why do the goblins want to attack a farm in the middle of nowhere? The answer is to make this place a stronghold so that they can attack the town. This is only revealed later in the novel, in the narration of the Goblin Lord's thoughts. But if this is not explained early, the audience will be completely baffled and be taken out of the story. That's why both the anime and manga did this. While this change addressed an issue, it also opened a can of worms, because if Goblin Slayer had not fortified the farm so thoroughly, then it wouldn't become a valuable stronghold for the Goblin Lord in the first place. So there is a missed opportunity for White Fox Studio to address this and turn it into a character plot point. Goblin Slayer should have acknowledged that it was his hubris that attracted goblins to this place. He thought that he could fight and defend against the goblins all by himself, but he finally realized that he needed the help of others. It would add an extra layer of meaning when he goes to the guild to request help from other adventurers. Episode 12. Manga readers may notice that the fight with the barbarian hero is missing from the Goblin Lord's flashback, but that scene only exists in the manga. The mangaka took creative license to give the impression that the Goblin Lord is really powerful, because he had defeated the hero and taken his powerful battle axe in the past. So he posed a significant threat to Goblin Slayer. That makes it less jarring when Goblin Slayer somehow lost to the Goblin Lord due to plot reason. In the novel, the Goblin Lord only used a normal battle axe, and he was described to be as powerful as a human warrior. So it is completely strange how Goblin Slayer, who defeated Goblin champions before, would lose to the equivalent of a normal human warrior. The anime's solution for this is to have him say that he is not great at frontal combat. In the novel, he was actually referring to his broken shield. His shield is not that great at frontal combat. Okay, now let's go into the big question. Why did Studio White Fox rearrange the plot in this order? The first obvious reason is because Volume 1's ending has the most powerful climax out of all the volumes I've read. It is also the perfect place to wrap up Goblin Slayer's story, as he grows from being a monomaniacal hero akin to Captain Ahab from Moby Dick into a human being. He now understands the value of teamwork, gained the respect of other adventurers, and have also displayed to the world the dangers of Goblin. Any story past this point will be superfluous and counteracts all the development of the Goblin Slayer's character. In fact, later volumes have vandarized him into a comical version of himself and lost direction completely. The once dark fantasy has turned into a harem comedy where a great amount of focus is spent on the girls fighting for his attention. The direction of the Goblin Slayer character concept is also undermined. In Volume 5, a wild Goblin Paladin appeared, and it seems as if the goblins are evolving. I am not sure where this is going, but if it turns into a JRPG save the world sort of story, then it betrays the premise of him being the pawn who is not going to change the world as the author himself envisioned. He is supposed to be the street hero like Frank Castle, the Punisher, not Superman. But what do you think? Do you think Goblin Slayer deserves another season? Comment below. If you're a YouTuber, feel free to make a reply video to debate this point. Overall, I'm impressed that White Fox were able to fix so many of the world building problems of the series that I have listed in a video at the start of the season. They have even dealt with the obvious contradiction that goblins are weak and dumb like children, by completely not mentioning it at all, squarely putting the blame on the inexperienced adventurers themselves. Okay, so that's it from me. Remember to like and subscribe. CJ, over and out.